just talking about the man who is, saying he's a self-taught data engineer hired as that position in a company. They've recognized him for what, although he doesn't have the credentials from a school, he has the knowledge and expertise to carry on in that job. So um, he can't use that title, though, on social networks, marketing himself through LinkedIn. Is that the first you've ever heard of this?
No, actually, it's not surprising to me as we're starting to see more and more of this with LinkedIn because there are a number of regulated professions that people just don't even realize are protected and that you can't use them. And the more people are public facing with their social media accounts, the more likely it is that people are going to catch on that they're using these registered or these protected trades and professions.
The man, though, he was surprised that, the order came knocking on his door through LinkedIn saying, hey, you can't use this title, engineer, in your main header or as a title because you're not part of our order. So, what does that mean for him? He's saying, well, this is my job. So, what can I do? He's saying, you know, he can't use that title, and that's what it is.
And so you can't use the actual title. So he can't actually say he's an engineer unless he's registered and insured through the association. And it does differ by province and by country. But what you can do is I would encourage him to take advantage of where you've got the paragraphs that you can make a description on what is it that you do. So he can say in there that I view myself as a self-taught engineer. Over the years, I've practiced in the area of engineering on projects X, Y, and Z. So you really nailed it when you said you cannot use it in the header as a title, but you can use it in terms of when you're describing what your actions are, projects that you've accomplished, achievements, those kind of things are where I'd encourage him to really think about as he brands himself, where he can use it in a different context.
He was saying, though, the downfall is not having it in that header. He won't be in terms of being searched online. He won't be the candidates that pop up, let's say, for other jobs and other opportunities, or just looking for somebody in this profession. So if he doesn't have it in his header, is that his downfall? And even, let's say, his CV going for other jobs, what does that mean if that title is not there? Because he is self-taught, he doesn't have the education, so he can't even pay into the order and the dues if he wanted to.
Yeah, and this is a really interesting one as we move forward because more and more people with open source education are going to be self-taught in different professions. But really, when this order was put into place to protect these professions, it was really about protecting the public at large. So, say, for example, using the title of a doctor. They don't want someone who's self-taught to be a doctor and use the title, right? Because it is about protecting the public at large. And that's why, unfortunately, some people do kind of get stuck in this, but the intention of the order is very good and it's to protect all of us. But I think over time, we really are going to have to look at this and say, how do we sort of massage the legislation to make sure that we're also acknowledging these new types of education as well? And how do we certify and give people credit for it?
Exactly. And it is a law, right? Because I spoke to the order and they sent me their statements and saying, look, we're following Quebec legislation. This is how it's laid out. So this isn't something that could really be fought, right? Tell me about that aspect. There isn't any legal remedies, and they could actually have a legal case against this man if he didn't remove it.
Yep, absolutely. You can go on the quebec.ca website and get a full list of the professions that are protected. And you can actually delve down into your industry and get some more information. But the reality is, unless you're going to challenge the legislation and the professional protective order, you're probably not going to get anywhere in this regard, at least no time soon.
And what you were saying is the only way to rectify this really is legislation being updated in time, right? I mean, the order told me that their legislation, the Quebec legislation in regards to engineering, was updated last fall. So I'm assuming there's no budging when it comes to, having the credentials and the different criteria met that they've laid out, right?
Yeah, exactly. And again, because the intentions are good and it's to protect the broader public, you're protecting millions of people. So people addressing a one-off situation is highly unlikely. And that's where I think people need to get really creative in their branding of themselves. So whether it's your personal website, your cover letter for your CV is a great place to lay out those things. if you're a sole proprietor or a consultant, all kinds of material and sort of marketing type stuff, you can absolutely get your message across without using a designation like engineer large E. So people just have to be really careful because they're often surprised to hear that they can't use this language.
So it's just about removing the designation and then just recreating. Although he has the title within his current position, it doesn't apply to him. Who he is, ENG, it's not applied to him.
Yeah, and I think you have to be really careful. And if you ever are in doubt, I would just call them directly and clarify because you don't want to get yourself in trouble. And then, more importantly, if you get yourself in a situation where you do get hired, one of the grounds for just cause termination is falsifying your application or lying in your interview process. So, even if it wasn't intentional and you accidentally misuse something, this could be used against you in a worst case scenario. So, you just want to be really careful. You don't want an unintended consequence from something that you actually thought was something that was helpful, that was getting your message across. So the message is really just to be careful in this regard and do your homework, particularly in your jurisdiction, because they actually do change from province to province as well.
What is it like in other provinces?
They've all got lots
Stricter?
and lots. Pardon me?
Is Quebec stricter? Like, just give me a breakdown of what that's like.
I haven't actually counted profession by province. They all are actually quite comprehensive from what I've seen in my experience. But specific job titles, once you sort of go into the 100 or so professions, they are going to vary slightly from province to province. So there may be a certain province where something's protected, and it may be in English versus French or both languages as well. So you just really need to be careful and make sure, because there are some that are only protected in French and not English as well. So do your homework for your specific one.
And in terms of, enforcing the laws that are out there, is it safe to say that there are people from different orders, not just engineering, going on LinkedIn and just surveying and policing who is actually part of our order and who's paying their dues and who isn't, who's using their titles wrongly or doesn't have a title?
Yeah, no, absolutely. There are people that are policing it, but I wouldn't say people are actually hired to go out and do this on the regular. It's more someone stumbles across the profile and would be more likely to lodge a complaint or to notify the association. I mean, someone may say, well, I went to school for 10 years to get my engineering degree, and all these people are using this designation that I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to acquire in all these years. And so more often what I find is that the complaints are actually coming from someone that accidentally stumbled across it. Is it someone going out and policing LinkedIn profiles?
Where does that leave this gentleman and others who are maybe in his position that don't even know it yet, that get approached, or, just overall, what is your message to them in terms of, is this the end of the world? Can you move forward and also position yourself really well in the job market?
Yeah, so it's not the end of the world if you do get a letter asking you to change it or notifying you that you're in conflict. First of all, apologize and make the change immediately. That's the first thing I would do. Don't try to fight it unless you're going to hire legal counsel. The reality is take it seriously and then take a step back and think about, what is my story to prospective employers or prospective clients? Sort of figure out what you're going to say, what your message is, and then just double check. And in a case like this where you've already been warned, I would encourage you to actually just pick up the phone and make a quick phone call and just say, I would just like to clarify and make sure that this is okay.
And going forward, I guess in his current role as a data engineer at his workplace, how does that translate just in marketing himself on, online or on a CV?
I would encourage him to talk to the organization and let them know. So in his case, the challenge that he's run into, and often you can actually change job titles to job titles that sound very, very similar, right? And so you can look at large tech organizations and say, okay, what other titles have we used that are similar that basically mean the same thing? There's usually similar ones that you can use as well.
I have no more questions, Debbie, but is there anything you want to add? Anything I should know about this?
No, I think you've covered it, but I would again say one more thing is, once you're aware that they do regulate these professional titles, just take a look in your industry and make sure that you're not actually using something incorrectly, because even something that seems like it's minor, all these things could come back to bite you, especially if it's in the public domain, because even if you change it, you never know if someone's taken a screenshot of it or they've printed off a copy of your resume or your LinkedIn profile. and it can come back to bite you later. So better safe than sorry here. Just make sure you're following the rules, and then use the information paragraphs to really get the employment branding piece about who you are, what you want to achieve, and what your professional accomplishes are, because that's what really prospective employers look for, is what have you achieved and what have you done. And so you can do that in lots of other ways.